Radio Lincolnshire.
Now, the two men right at the top of Lincolnshire Police are hoping to get back to work today after a difficult period, a difficult 6 months. Chief Constable Neil Rhodes and his boss, Police Commissioner Alan Hardwick, say they're ready to move on after a period which has seen Lincolnshire hit the national headlines for all the wrong reasons. A report into allegations made against Chief Constable Neil Rhodes has finally been published, and this report has cleared him of any wrongdoing. When the allegations were first made, Commissioner Hardwick suspended the chief, only to have that decision overturned by a High Court judge. They say they can work together. They say that's all just water under the bridge. They're professionals. Can they really? After all this, our political reporter is Sharon Edwards. It's quite a complicated report. It's quite complicated allegations involved in all this. But just recap the findings.
Well, running to a rather dense 39 pages, as you say, or it just boils down to the fact that Chief Constable Neil Rhodes did nothing wrong. And in fact, in his report, Sir Peter Fahy says that not only is there no evidence to substantiate any of the allegations made against Neil Rhodes, but he found evidence to the contrary to support Neil Rhodes' assertions that he was acting from the best motives. And as if to emphasise the point, Sir Peter says that he has complete confidence that he was indeed acting from the best motives. So not only has he wiped the slate clean, he's given it a good polish and put a bouquet of flowers on top.
So how did we get to this point? What's behind it all?
Well, as you said there in the introduction, it's been dragging on an awful long time. An allegation made against Neil Rhodes back in February, and he was suspended. None of us knew why he'd been suspended until the following month, when he actually went to the High Court to challenge it. And as you'll remember, the High Court judge said, no, this decision to suspend was irrational and perverse, which of course was not welcomed by the man who'd suspended him, the elected Police and Crime Commissioner Alan Hardwick. So Neil Rhodes was reinstated in early April, but by then Sir Peter Fahy had been commissioned to look at this. We don't know why it's taken so long for the report to come out, although, as you said, when you read it, it's quite a complex report, certainly extremely thorough.
Yes, what was the Chief Constable actually accused of?
Well, it all comes down, literally, nothing more than this, to a 25-minute telephone conversation that he had with the Assistant Chief Executive of West Yorkshire Police. Neil Rhodes was acting as a mediator between West Yorkshire Police and a former employee who had a grievance against the police, a Muslim lawyer, in fact, who told Neil Rhodes that he wanted to pursue a claim of racial discrimination. So there was a telephone conversation between Neil Rhodes and West Yorkshire Police. Neil Rhodes said he wanted to bring the parties together around the table, broker a sensible agreement, avoid what he called a bloody day in court. Now, several weeks after that conversation took place, the other gentleman on the telephone wrote to Alan Hardwick in Lincolnshire, said he had some concerns about some of the comments that Neil Rhodes had made. He suggested that Neil Rhodes knew this racial discrimination claim was false, but he was helping this gentleman to pursue it anyway, as a leverage to gain more money from the taxpayer effectively. And he felt that as though the conversation shouldn't have happened in the first place. Neil Rhodes, as I say, has been completely exonerated of all that. But you can understand the difficulties facing Sir Peter when he's trying to ascertain from two people what happened in a private telephone conversation several months ago.
So the reports from Sir Peter Fahy, as you say, clears the Chief Constable of doing anything wrong. What sort of reaction have we had to that report?
Well, Neil Rhodes has not been giving any media interviews. What he has done is released an interview on YouTube, actually, in which he answers some questions and gives his general reaction to this report. Obviously, he's very relieved. His unblemished record, policing record stretching back 27 years, remains untouched. And he says, yes, he just wants to get back to the job at hand.
I've been handed a copy of Sir Peter Fahy's report by the Police and Crime Commissioner. I have to say I'm very grateful to Sir Peter for a thorough, comprehensive investigation, and I'm absolutely delighted that I've been completely exonerated in relation to all aspects of the conduct allegation. You know, I've sought over the last 6 months to maintain a dignified silence, safe in the knowledge that I knew there was never any substance in the spurious allegation, and I don't intend to depart from that approach. I want simply to get on with my job of working with the Commissioner to provide an effective and improving policing for our county of Lincolnshire.
Neil Rhodes there, and Alan Hardwick, the Police and Crime Commissioner, told me he stands by his decision back in February to suspend the Chief Constable, even though the legal challenge to that has actually cost him in legal fees alone around £37,000. But he still thinks it was the right thing to do.
It's a very thorough report. Its conclusions I accept, and in my words, and this is my word, Neil Rhodes is exonerated. I think what I did was the right action to take, because had I ignored the allegation, well, that would have been the thin end of the wedge, wouldn't it? What else would I have ignored? What else would people have expected me to ignore? What else would have happened? I mean, it's, you know, I just couldn't brush it off. What I did, I think, was the correct procedure. And you won't get me to say that I've reconsidered or that I regret it.
It's strange, William, because before the report was released at 2:00 yesterday afternoon, Alan Hardwick's office released quite a lengthy statement, and it did contain a couple of curious lines. In it, Alan Hardwick is quoted as saying that he's unhappy that the investigators haven't been able to ascertain absolutely what happened in this telephone conversation, and even goes on to say that he still has some concerns about the allegation. And I said to him, well, are you effectively saying then that you still have doubts about this, which he denied? He said, no, I accept the findings of the report, and I'm ready to draw a line under it.
I would have liked, in an ideal world, let's be honest, for an absolute black or white conclusion. Now, this was actually a conversation, as it says in the report, between two highly placed in policing individuals. There was no independent witness, and so because of that, the report has concluded that there is not enough evidence to substantiate the allegation. So, I accept that. I accept that entirely.
But is it your message, then, that there isn't enough evidence to convict, but you're not personally convinced he's innocent?
Oh, no. It would be wrong to put that sort of interpretation on my words. What I am pleased about is that a line can be drawn under this now, and also I'm delighted to say that Neil Rhodes has assured me he will apply for the post of Chief Constable, permanent post of Chief Constable for this county, when I advertise it.
Yeah, no, that is interesting, isn't it? Because he could just accept it, and there's the line. Having said that, you may think there's a line. The line isn't over.
We haven't crossed it yet.
We haven't got to that point yet, because there is still more to come.
Well, for those two gentlemen involved, as you heard there, Alan Hardwick is now going to pursue fulfilling the permanent post of Chief Constable, and Neil Rhodes has said in his statement that he intends to apply for that job. So we have that to come. We also have a separate inquiry. You losing count here, William, by the Lincolnshire's Police and Crime Panel. Now, their job is to scrutinise the decisions of Alan Hardwick as Police and Crime Commissioner, and they've come in for a lot of criticism nationally from MPs and the likes of Keith Vaz for not having dragged Alan Hardwick in earlier and banged on the table and said, why have you suspended the Chief Constable? They are looking into it now. It looks as though it's going to be quite a thorough inquiry. There are, though, that have said already that it could be having, after the fact, too little too late, maybe?
Well, Chris Cook is the chair of that task group who's going to be carrying out this investigation. Can you just explain what your report is looking at?
Yes, good morning. Yes, certainly. We have 8 terms of reference for our group, and the Sir Peter Fahy report is only one of those. We'll be looking at the suspension itself, the communication that took place, both internally and externally, the referral to the IPCC, the judicial review, as I've already said, the Sir Peter Fahy investigation, the relationship between the Commissioner and the Chief Constable, the costs involved in this case, the morale of the police force at the time that this happened, and any lessons to be learned.
And when will this come out? When will this report be finished?
We've clearly been waiting for the outcome of the Manchester inquiry, and we're very pleased that this matter has now been finalised, because that allows us to forge ahead. We're also very pleased with the outcome. This enables the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner to move on in the interests of policing in Lincolnshire. Going back to your question, we will be seeking to interview the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner at the end of September, and then following that we will report.
It's all very late, isn't it? I mean, is there any point in doing this? Shouldn't you have done this right at the start? As we heard, shouldn't you have got Alan Hardwick in, the Police and Crime Commissioner, right at the start and said, what are you doing, suspending the Chief Constable? Well,
of course, it's easy to say that, but when you actually look at the practical issues around that, there were two matters, of course. There was the investigation by Sir Peter Fahy and the judicial review. Now, looking back...
But before any of that, shouldn't you have known that the Police and Crime Commissioner was about to suspend the Chief Constable, and there should have been a conversation? You're meant to be scrutinising the decisions made by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Shouldn't have been a conversation between the panel and the Commissioner?
There was a conversation between the Commissioner and the panel chair at the time, around that time. But as I was trying to explain, we cannot interfere in these two processes. The investigation is a disciplinary investigation and may have been a criminal investigation as well. And the judicial review is an active process. It's common practice and recognised practice not to interfere into these processes in case we would have compromised them. So that was a frustration for us, clearly a frustration for other people. But of course, looking back, if we'd have called Mr. Hardwick in, we could have asked him some questions. He may not have been able to answer them. We wouldn't have had the whole story. And I can reassure you that this is a detailed and robust review.
It's been a bit embarrassing for Lincolnshire, the whole thing, hasn't it?
It's certainly hit the headlines for obvious reasons.
A classic example of how not to do things. That's what the Home Affairs Select Committee Chair Keith Vaz said.
These are high-profile figures, and it's bound to attract high media attention.
Can I just ask, if your investigation, whatever point this comes out, if your investigation says on the suspension that the Police and Crime Commissioner was wrong to suspend the Chief Constable over this matter, then what? What do you do?
We'll be making some recommendations. Clearly, that's already been said at the judicial review by Mr. Justice Stuart Smith.
Yes, but you've got a situation where the Commissioner, although accepting, as you would have to do, a High Court judge's decision, disagreed. He doesn't agree with that decision.
No, I understand that.
Wouldn't, at this point, an apology from Commissioner Hardwick go a long way?
Well, that's something that we'll be talking to Mr. Hardwick about when we interview him later in September.
What do you mean? What will you say?
Well, the crafting of the questions is a matter for us, but we'll clearly be covering all aspects of the 8 elements of the terms of reference. And we will be asking him around his statements that he made concerning the judicial review, statements he made to the media, etc.
OK, well, we'll be interested to see what happens. Thank you very much for that. Chris Cook, chair of that task group. It's all been a bit of a mess, really, but the Commissioner and the Chief Constable say back to the job in hand of sorting out policing in Lincolnshire. That's what they're doing now. But can it really be the same after everything that's happened? What do you think should happen?